All right. Well, you want us to get started, Rachel, or what do you think?
Yeah, Bob said that he's having some trouble joining, but he'll be on shortly.
Okay. Well, so what I've done, I was talking to Brad before y'all got on. Number one, this is going to be wonky because I don't have a mouse. My mouse broke or isn't working, and I'm having serious technological problems without having a mouse. Um, anyway, I got comments back from Brad and comments from, well, really drafts from Brad and a draft from Blake. So I took mine, Brad's, and Blake's and put them into one document, which is what Rachel just shared with you all. So it's kind of long, and I started thinking about like what the public would need to know or want to know, and kind of think about the sort of questions I get from students and from the public about like, well, I don't understand what is a PAC? What is an independent expenditure? So I put a lot of definitions in there. I got them mainly from the FEC, but some from the NCSBE as well. So I just thought I'm gonna kind of throw everything in, and then we
Mhm.
can start paring it down and editing it down to something that's digestible for the public. And maybe create some kind of infographic from this, but infographic wise, not sure how y'all think or what y'all think about that. Or if anybody has that as a skill set. Anybody want to volunteer? It's not the easiest thing in the world to create an infographic, but we'll talk about that. So if you have the draft, it's called Draft Campaign Finance Section for Report. Um, at the top, I thought we'd just go over it real quick. At the top, it's just a little bit of it, like an introduction. It's an overview of why we have campaign finance, just kind of the goals of policies overall over time. And then I go into campaign contributions, just what they are, and if it's gray, it has like a little gray background. Actually, I don't know if that came through on the PDF. Can you see that? Some of the text have a gray background.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, I'm looking at the Google Doc. If it's gray background, it came from North Carolina General Statutes or the State Board of Elections. I found this little cool infographic from Investopedia, but it talks about hard money versus soft money, which is often a question I get from people. They're like, I've heard about soft money, like, and how's money soft? How's money hard? And just people don't understand what that means.
Mhm.
So I like this little graph. It kind of just gives you a quick and dirty look at with the differences between hard and soft money. Soft money being easy to report, hard money being it's much more reportable and has a lot more restrictions on it. Then I had to go down and just the different kinds of contributions and definitions. So like candidates and candidate committees, what they can collect or spend on contributions. So the gray part again is from the state. The not gray part is from the FEC. So in here, I think we probably need to put that there's $6,400 for individuals to give contributions. And then political party committees. So a lot of people don't realize that they think about this campaign finance as individuals giving to candidates. And that's all they think about. Or sometimes they'll think about corporations giving to candidates, but they don't think about the fact that other candidates give to other candidates, and there's candidate committees, and there's leadership committees, and there's all these different kinds of different candidate committee or party committees or leadership committees that are giving to one another. And they don't think about how that money kind of goes across lines or goes back and forth between different entities. And then I have political action committees, and then what an independent expenditure and independent expenditure committee is, just so everyone knows what that is, how we treat corporations and labor unions, And then down here, the individual contributions, which I need to put the part in about the state regulations. And then what a political action committee is, this is from, I think, Brad, about the different PACs in the state and what they can give. A little bit about political parties, special interest groups, and then kind of segue into campaign expenditures, which is, to me, a completely different category. So you have contributions, which are governed by one set of rules, and then you've got expenditures, which are governed by a totally different set of rules. So when we look at expenditures, it's a different way that we can spend money in the state, although there's many, many fewer rules on expenditures than contributions. So this doesn't really fit our three categories either. I was looking back at our three categories. The one that Brad, Blake, and I were working on was what are the compliance requirements for candidates and when they have to file reports. And then Brad, you were also on the one about what the sources of money. I guess maybe that's what you were looking at. And then Blake was the campaign reporting disclosure requirements. So all of that is kind of joined together in this one document. So what I'd like to get from you all is just feedback on, do you think we need like 3 separate reports, or thoughts, whatever you want to give me feedback on is great.
Well,
I know
I'll start.
Good.
Although I'm struggling, I couldn't get my computer link to work. Anyway, it's a long story. So I'm hand holding my phone because I've got to have it charged because it was about out of juice. Anyway, so I think one report is fine on this. I think whether it's an introduction or maybe even a conclusion, saying something like that, we find it's important that voters understand the campaign finance landscape. And we're not necessarily saying, here's how you ought to reform it. I mean, you could spend years trying to figure that out. But something that from the committee says, okay, objective 1 is to better inform the public about how campaign finance works. And at this point, we're just doing a draft. So our final report isn't due until post-election. So I think doing that in maybe talking about at this stage some sort of visual infomercial that is easier for the public to comprehend all of this, is an objective. Because really what we're trying to do is say, here are objectives as opposed to, necessarily the status quo. And the only other thing is, I think, didn't we list in our 3, Martha, the lack of resources for the Board of Elections to do campaign compliance? Yeah, at least that was one I was interested.
Yeah, we absolutely did. And that was like about the campaign, the disclosure compliance requirements and the resources from the state.
Right.
Yes, that is there. It's not in this report yet.
Yeah.
But we can go back and add that in.
Yeah, that would be the only other thing I would add. But I think this is very good and very helpful. And is what we want to accomplish. But let the committee members chime in. Speak up, folks. You can't be bashful. Martha, you're a professor. Call on him.
I'm sorry,
Mary
I just spoke and I was muted. I didn't know it. I wondered why you said that. No, but I think this looks great. And I appreciate all the work that you all put in it.
Blake, were you gonna say something? Thanks, Susan.
As you say, I think the introduction is a good idea. I like we're pretty definitional here, which is good. And ultimately this will be a small part of a larger report, but I certainly concur with Bob's thoughts.
Okay. Brad, do you have anything?
I'd echo Blake. I mean, having seen the majority of this before, and kind of knowing what we were building towards, I think all of that makes sense. It's just, as I was saying before, we're just having we've got the mass, and we need to chisel something down
Yeah.
that's workable for our audience.
Yeah, I definitely think it's there's a lot in there.
Right. Well, as you know, you could write full textbooks of this stuff. It's not
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It's not something that we're going to be able to make digestible easily. So
Yeah.
that's going to be our biggest challenge.
So, and I can work on an infographic. I'm just not going to be able to do it until like the middle of May. I have to get through finals and exams and everything else. So, at that time, I can work on trying to create some kind of visual for this. Did you see my little visual that I used for my class? Apparently not. Okay. Well, I'm going to show it to you because
It was in was it in a PowerPoint?
yeah, it's in the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I saw it. It was good. With the buckets.
The buckets, yes. A bucket drawing.
Yeah, Mary Jo, we are bringing on an intern who is a rising junior at UVA, and
Cool.
part of her responsibilities will be to assist committees in that. So we don't have a definitive start date for Dimney, but and obviously you have your own students there as a resource, but we're we do want to say that we'll have some help for you as needed in this.
That would be cool. So these are my PowerPoints. I've used these in my class and they're pretty outdated. So sorry about that. But I always like the bucket thing because students could realize that like money was going to certain entities and they could figure out what kind of money was going to certain entities. So I did these years ago. And I think this is the oldest one or the newest one. It's post BICRA, and about the separation between candidates and campaigns or parties or the PACs. So I love this one, but I'm not much of an artist, so that's probably why I love it because it was easy.
Well, Mary, if you will grant me the ability to tell a short story, I had an argument in the Supreme Court some years ago dealing with the state budget. And the way I wanted to illustrate it was using different buckets. So I actually brought some little plastic beach buckets to the court for oral argument. And when I pulled them out, the looks I got from my former colleagues on the court, like, or have you lost your mind bringing beach buckets for exhibits to the oral argument?
A visual can be super helpful.
Yes, that's right. I thought it illustrated the point with great clarity. So anyway.
But I mean, so that's what I've done in the past. That's not really what I'm thinking about doing in the future. I have really no idea, but that's great to know that we have an intern. If I can, what I think I want to do is kind of sketch it out and then have somebody help me create it and make it pretty, and readable and usable and stuff like that. Because that's definitely not my skill set at all. I'm with Bob buckets, it's about as good as I get. Great minds think alike with the buckets there, Bob. Okay, so that's basically where I'm going is, in the next couple of weeks, create some kind of, actually after the next couple of weeks, create some kind of graphic and then bring it back to y'all and have us, critique it or whatever and start sketching it out for the final report. Does that sound good? Am I missing anything on the substance side? I mean, I know we have to get like the staffing part of that.
Mary Jo, do you want us to try and gather that specific information? Are there members of the committee that would like to undertake?
Yeah, that would be great. If y'all can figure out like what, how many staffers there are now to do campaign finance reporting and disclosure requirements, how many people they've got, that kind of stuff, that would be really helpful.
Well, I think one of the dramatic things we can do, both in a report and maybe do it visually, in this context, I was talking to a fundraiser for the Stein gubernatorial campaign, and they were talking about raising $50 to $60 million for the governor's race. And if you just think about the logistics of trying to manage from a state board of elections finance component, keeping up with that flow of money, and that's one candidate in one race. I mean, you can conceivably, excluding the presidential race, I mean, you could have, $500 million floating around in campaign money, and ranging from minuscule contributions to all of the various things we've talked about. So
Yeah.
I think, but yeah, let me get with Rachel and our intern, and then if Brad, Blake, any Susan want to, kind of dig in on that, let us know so that we can add that as kind of a two-part component here.
That sounds good.
For some reason, I feel like from a presentation, maybe this was covered, and I feel like the number might have been 2. Am I
Yeah.
misremembering that?
That's what I was thinking too. Lindsay talked about it in her presentation. It was like 2 or 4. I'm thinking it was 2, but I'm pretty sure it's in that presentation somewhere about how many people they have.
Yeah, and I think, part of it's the timeliness. You have these rolling reports that are due. How quickly can the campaign finance? Well, she said they had like 7 auditors, but I mean, I just have no sense of how much work. But I got the impression from Lindsay that not they're doing the best they can just to make sure reports are in and appear to be accurate. And so from a campaign violation enforcement component, I think they have like 1 investigator or something. So I think sort of looking at the broader scope of getting the information, letting the public know about the information, making sure the information is correct, and then pursuing violations. What sort of aggregate staffing do they have?
Well, and if we're going to go in the direction of recommendations and staff, I wonder too, and this, I did a little research, but I wonder to what extent AI can be leveraged to scan these reports and compliance. Right? There's all talk about AI, healthcare realm, and regulatory realm to just add bandwidth and capacity. I might do a little digging, and maybe that's something that we should consider.
That's interesting that you mention that, Blake. So I have my whole class again is working on some of these ideas, and they've kind of gone off on a couple tangents, which is fine for class. But one thing that one student found is it's something called Benford's Law. I don't know if it's a really cool, it's a mathematical law about numbers, and you can use it to analyze data to find anomalies. Like this is one way they find if people have been cheating on SATs or standardized tests. Like if there's statistically the first number in any kind of array is like the number 1, like 30% of the time. So if it's outside that statistical bound, they know there's something wrong with that data. And so one of the things that the student is recommending is that the state use this kind of statistical tool to do that kind of auditing, which I think is really cool. I mean, I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. You know, I mean, he totally found this on his own, which is really neat. So, I mean, that was my other part of today's meeting, is to talk about some of these ideas that the students have actually come up with, which is, I mean, Bedford's Law is one of them. The other one is campaign donations, and doing them completely differently through a public financing method that's been used. It's been piloted in Seattle. They're called democracy vouchers. And the state or city gives citizens or gives registered voters like a coupon. And it's, say, maybe $50, and you can give your $50 to one candidate, or you can split it up amongst like 10 candidates, you know, give everyone $5. But the vouchers are funded by the state or city, but the citizens get to divvy up the money. It's kind of a cool idea, a cool way of doing campaign finance, where it's not really strictly public financing in the way that we've done it in the past. But it's a way of doing it that still allows citizens to have a say in how the money is spent. But it doesn't necessarily lock candidates into just using public financing. So those kind of ideas that they've come up with, I'd like to be part of the report some way. I mean, they've done a lot of work, so it would be kind of cool to kind of maybe do a little bit of the report on that. My only problem is that they're not going to be done with those until May 2nd is their last report is due. So I'm waiting for them all to come in to get some of their ideas. But
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, I think that's great. And I would say again, this May interim report is sort of an arbitrary date
Okay.
that we set to just make sure we, don't wait till, November 5th to actually start thinking about what we want to do.
Okay.
One of the things that I think we have decided not to do, we're not going to say we recommend you do this, but I think we can talk about, here's the problems we found, here's solutions that other jurisdictions have utilized or proposed that may be worth considering, by decision makers. So I think, these sort of innovative campaign finance ideas. I was thinking about what you said. We had public financing for judicial races for a few years. And I sort of like the idea of people feeling like they have an investment in who they give their $50 to. So, maybe you do a pilot program on judicial races or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
but,
yeah, I mean, they're all creating like a 2-page like proposal of their policy that they want to propose to the state. So I'll boil that down into probably like a paragraph or two once I get them all in. Yeah. I think it's cool. I mean, they've come up with some kind of cool ideas.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of looking at the projects and things, I'm not opposed to that. I think the Benford's Law is particularly interesting as we think about auditing and adding capacity and compliance. I think one hesitation, and just thinking about the bipartisan nature of the commission and about broad-based buy-in and what's included, what's not included, and whether that's an endorsement or not endorsement of a particular policy position. I think there's some that will probably be in favor of public financing and significantly limiting, and then there's others who are like money is a form of speech, protected speech, and probably don't want to limit that. So that would be my hesitation.
Yeah, well, the only thing I'll say on that, and I agree on the public financing. My biggest complaint was that by putting limits on the candidate, I mean, 250,000 for a statewide judicial race is, a drop in the bucket. And so, I mean, if you gave people vouchers, I wouldn't, and this is personal, this is my personal preference. I wouldn't put other limits on the candidates. I would just say, here is a vehicle for providing funding to judicial candidates, for example. But if they want to go out and raise another $1 million to go on top of their, vouchers, shall we call them, they can do it. But I mean, yeah, and again, I think, putting creative ideas out there shouldn't be viewed as necessarily a recommendation. I mean, we all know that there's nothing simple about any of this. So, but we'll be sensitive to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, and a lot of these ideas I don't necessarily agree with. My only goal is to promote what my students have done, quite honestly. I mean, they've done some pretty good work. I don't always agree with it, but as long as it's valid and cited correctly, I'm okay with it, okay with putting it out there. So, yeah.
Well, we don't necessarily have to put everything in the report, correct?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we can sort of cherry pick through and see if there's creative things. I don't, that tell them it's a competition. The best 5 ideas get put into the report or something.
Honestly, they're just excited about the fact that their ideas would get in a report. They don't care about winning. They're just like, oh, we can get in a report, like this is kind of cool. Yeah. So,
Right.
okay. Well, I'll just summarize them and write them up. And, as like, these are other things or other ideas that are being tried out around the country. Put it that way, like just send some topics, ideas, policies out there. Yeah. Not recommending or pushing any of them. So, all right. Sound good?
It does. Thank you for your work on this, Mary Jo. You've been a good leader.
I don't know about that, Bob. It's been a little hectic the past couple months.
Hey,
Um,
tell me about it.
well, Rachel, when do we have our next meeting scheduled?
Let me take a look now. May 1st.
Oh yeah, that's like next week, isn't it? Or week after next. Can we go ahead and push that out just a little bit further, so that I just need more time to think and write.
Okay. What are we thinking date wise for that?
Maybe like the mid-May or even the end of May would be better for me, but I don't want to push it too far either.
Okay.
What do y'all think?
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I should have a little more flexibility mid-May as well. It's just kind of last little sprint here on a few different projects.
So we're thinking the 15th, maybe?
Oh, I can't do it then because
Okay.
I have to go to a conference.
22nd, or is that too late in May? Or do we want to just look at May 8th?
Well, you can do the 22nd. That's when I was
Yeah.
supposed to have my fair election hearing, and they've asked for a continuance. So I'm assuming it will not be the 22nd, and the day is open.
And I
Yeah,
won't
the
be
tw-
able, that won't work for me, but you certainly can do it without me.
The 22nd would work. The 8th is probably just too soon because I won't have time, and that's in the middle of exams. So like the 22nd or the 29th.
I can do the first half of the week, the 20th through the 22nd. Thursday, I'm checking out for a few days. So
So does the
So
22nd or 29th work?
Blake, are you 22nd or 29th? You're not gonna be here.
Either is fine.
Okay,
I'm just gone, the 23rd through the 27th.
okay. Why don't we do the 29th? Just because then Susan can be there too.
Okay. Same time work great?
Yeah, it works great for me.
2
Awesome.
o'clock.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Excellent.
All right, gang.
All right, so somebody's gonna check on the staffing with Lindsay Wakely.
Yeah. Yeah, Rachel, will you touch base with me and we'll kind of go from there?
Okay.
Okay.
All
Right, sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See
Okay.
you.
y'all in like a
Thank
month.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you very
care.
much.